So for nearly 2 decades, the Banksy market has been defined by a handful of instantly recognisable images. But in 2025, we're seeing something different, a quieter, more rational, more selective market. One where overlooked editions, disciplined buyers, and a global collector base are reshaping the landscape. Today, we're breaking down where the real value sits, not only in the icons, but in the editions hiding in plain sight, and in the structural shifts that are defining Banksy's market in 2025. I'm joined by Joe Syer, our founder, who has spent his entire career trading Banksy prints and uniques, and as such has seen this market and its nuances evolve over the last 15 years, and Jasper Tordoff, our Banksy and Modern British Specialist. Hi guys, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Charlotte.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, to start with, I want to talk about a couple of things that I'm going to call what the market fixates on. Just because I think it's a really interesting jumping off point. At the end of 2025, why has the Banksy print market spent so long orbiting the same 4 or 5 motifs? Girl with Balloon, Lovers in the Air, Choose Your Weapon, Nola. What keeps these works at the center of the narrative? Jasper.
I think particularly with the Banksy market, I think these images are just the best images. We know that just because of the amount of requests that we get for these types of images. And, an image such as Girl with Balloon, which is arguably Banksy's most popular image, has massively been influenced by the media and by various sort of news articles, performance stunts that Banksy's done with that particular image. First to mention the shredding of the Girl with Balloon at Sotheby's in 2018, which created a sort of a hype around this image, and that eventually hit the market where people realized that they could buy these in unsigned and signed variations. And then typically I think collectors, either seasoned or new collectors, want to buy the best of the best, and that's why I think they're drawn towards images such as Lovers in the Air, signed and unsigned Girl with Balloons, Choose Your Weapons, all really strong images and very stereotypical Banksy works. Lovers in the Air's got the sort of political, radical dimension. Girl with Balloon just has that multifaceted appeal to it. And, Choose Your Weapons, Banksy borrowing from Keith Haring and other references. So that's probably why, they're the core works for Banksy collectors to consider.
Yeah, I think you made some good points there, Jasper. Girl with the Balloon was voted the nation's favourite artwork a few years ago. And like you say, yeah, Banksy has really become really well known for that motif. I mean, you were to show 10 people just down the high street, a picture of a Girl with a Balloon, probably 9 out of 10 would say, oh, that's a Banksy.
Yeah.
You just don't get that with any other artist, barring Warhol maybe or Basquiat. It just doesn't happen. So, I think one of the main allures to the Banksy market, these Girl with Balloons, Lovers in the Air, Choose Your Weapons, Nolas, they're so well known, throughout not just the art market, but, just ingrained in social media. They're just out there and very well known and obviously sought after, especially with art collectors. They ultimately want to have a piece of the action.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you're talking there about the market spotlight and also just the cultural sort of pop culture market that is, everybody knows. You walk down the street, a Girl with a Balloon, everyone knows it's Banksy. Is that a little bit different from other markets? I mean, there's obviously unique Girl with Balloons, which have still got that scarcity appeal, which wouldn't be instantly recognizable. Perhaps if you asked Joe Blogs on the street and there was something with a purple balloon, they'd say, oh, there's something a little bit off about that. How would you say the market, let's talk specifically about Girl with Balloon and unique versions, in the same way we can with the other 4 that I mentioned. How does that market differ from other markets where people are perhaps hunting things that are more scarce? Do you see collectors who want the absolute iconic red Girl with Balloon?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, red will always be the original Girl with Balloon. The more recent artist proof editions that the Banksy brought out, the pink, the purple, the gold. And there's a silver one as well, a 1-1 silver out there. They're lesser known, like you alluded to. People might think, oh, there's something a bit wrong with that. could be a knockoff, you know,
Mm.
purple one, it should be red.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the red one will always be it is the original one. And it's definitely, you know, the one that everybody knows.
Mm.
And is it mainly new collectors who are maybe, perhaps they're not new to collecting more generally, but collectors who just started looking at Banksy as something to add to their collection? Are they more likely to focus on these more iconic works?
I'd say so. I think it is interesting because I wouldn't say that they're entry level, these works, because they are the most popular. They have naturally command higher prices compared to other works that you can access by Banksy. And ironically, because these works are so massively traded, you know, there is a good supply of these pieces. And I think that does give new collectors and seasoned collectors a bit more confidence, just because if you're buying something that is hugely popular, you know, further down the line, you've got to think about exit strategies. Will that image always remain popular? It's likely going to. And so ironically, you know, given that how many have sold, and that it is a hugely popular, and it's, you know, very exposed and out there. Usually it's images that aren't so popular, and they're usually slightly rarer, that would command the higher prices and be sort of better pieces to collect. But
yeah, that still does happen on the Banksy market. You know, there are a number of VIP releases and artist proof releases that you know, Joe blogged, or you know, someone walking on the street might not even know as a Banksy. Things like Dumbo and Love Hurts. I think one of the positives about things like Girl with Balloons, you know, trading quite heavily, both publicly and privately, is it gives clients and collectors a reassurance of fair market value. You know, they can track and see what an edition has been trading for the last 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
And they can understand that, you know, right, this is the benchmark, one's recently sold at this price, and it will give them a much better understanding of fair market value, which is often very difficult to find within the art market.
Yes. Yeah.
Joe, you must have traded thousands of Girl with Balloons over the last 15, 20 years.
I'm not sure I've traded that many colours, but we've sold a few, yeah.
How do you feel about the image? Are you blind to it now? Does it appear in your dreams?
It doesn't appear in my dreams, but yeah, I still love it. It's a classic Banksy. Yeah, it still resonates with me. It still, you know, brings a smile to my face whenever we get one through, and you know, we're able to see it in person. You know, we recently had a diptych through as the spray paint on canvas, which, you know, when you see them in person, they're just superb works. So yeah, I don't think I'm not quite bored of it yet. Maybe ask me in 10 years, it might be a different story. But no, I think every time we get one through, you know, we do enjoy you know, seeing it, whether it's being, you know, unframed and having some restoration done, or whether we see it prior to shipping. Yeah, it's still a great image.
And they're also, just to echo that, it's also great fun to see these works, see Banksy's signature up close, get to see the sort of texture of the pieces. Yeah, you get to really get a much better sense of.
You do like pointing at it, don't you?
Yeah, get the finger out, but to get really up close with them is really quite special. And you know, because his style of screen printing so unique, and you know, from using stencils. And
Jasper, of those 4 that I mentioned, of what I'll call his sort of superstar spotlight works,
yeah,
what's your favourite and why?
Oh, I would probably say it's got to be the Choose Your Weapons, which I know they went through a bit of a run a couple of years ago and were hugely popular, and that sort of quietened down a little bit. I think they'll come back. I just like the simplicity of the image. I love how he sort of borrowed.
Which colourway is your favourite?
I'd probably say yellow. You want something that's going to hang on the wall, that's just going to be like pop with a massive bunch of colour. And
yours would have been grey.
Oh yeah, Q jumper, is it? So yeah, probably a bright yellow. Choose Your Weapon, you know, small edition size. I love the herring reference. You know, somebody who you don't need an art education to understand that image, and I think that's really important. It's got that immediate effect when you see it.
Before we move on to perhaps the lesser known works, would I be right in saying that, should I have the budget for one of the prize works, that it's a safer market to buy into?
Well, yes and no. Traditionally, do you want to be buying the best of the best? Absolutely. You can see it through a whole count of other markets. You look at Warhols, you want to be buying Marilyns, not electric chairs, if you've got the budget for it. That being said, is it a wise idea to diversify your portfolio and ultimately spread the risks by maybe purchasing 3 or 4 works rather than one? Again, if you've only got the budget for 1 work or 3 or 4 that you really love, and you've got wall space to hang it, it's such a personal, it's such a personal choice. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer.
Yeah, exactly. And it's more a question of, will the girl with balloon move to become a less popular image? And I don't think it will. And with the other 4 that we mentioned earlier, I think there is a chance for those to chop and change slightly, whereas the girl with balloon is that sort of canon of Banksy. And then also, like what you mentioned about spreading risk and buying maybe some lesser known additions by Banksy, because with everything it is cyclical and they might come into vogue at a later time. I mean, that's certainly true with some Warhol pieces. I know you mentioned the electric chairs and I wouldn't want to compare them with Marilyns, but as time moves on, as collectors sort of taste changes, people become interested in different parts of an artist's work, and that will happen with Banksy as the market becomes more mature. So there could be a high risk, high reward play there by buying something that's less valuable now, but could be more so in the future.
Yeah, I think it also comes down to your profile. Are you looking to buy it as an investment, or are you looking to buy it because you love the artwork? We've always said, buy with your eyes and not with your ears. Ultimately,
it's a great line.
If it is, I'm sure you'll be stealing that one.
I have done, yeah, for years now.
But if you're going to be hanging these works on your wall in your house, they need to bring a smile to your face. You want, every time you walk past it, you want to appreciate it. Whereas if you're just buying to stick in a warehouse and flat pack these and look to sell them in 12, 15, 18 months, there are probably different strategies for different clients.
Yes. You could become hugely analytical about it as well, and you can draw all of the public sale data and come up with some analogies of edition size, color use, to make a probably quite a good educated guess as to what might be.
You could do. I think the issue, if you just take public auction data, it doesn't take into account condition, timing. There are so many other variables that it's always difficult to just rely on the data. That you do need to have a little bit of market knowledge as well.
Yeah.
How often do you see a collector who's perhaps investigating the market come in with a really strong vision for what they want to buy versus wanting your opinion on a work? And we're going to assume that this is both investment and passion.
It's funny not to harp on about the girl with balloon, but there is a certain type of collector that will just want that particular piece, and that's completely fair enough, because for whatever reason it's very wall friendly. If they're living with their family, it can hang quite easily, and so it's usually just that work, and they won't really consider something else. A lot of collectors will come in with the view to just get an understand. They've been brought in by Banksy as an artist, maybe having seen some public works and really sort of like what he stands for, and then we'll sort of review, maybe work them way up from unsigned into some signed pieces, and really sort of just buy works that resonate with them, which is again the best advice that anyone can give anyone. And it's quite fun because you get to explore and you get to learn about different movements that Banksy was involved in at the time that these prints were made. So yeah, but with the girl with balloon, it's usually when somebody comes in saying they want a girl with balloon, they'll usually end up with a girl with balloon, just as the sort of the draw of the image, I guess.
We've also had, over the years, clients that got I wouldn't say no interest in Banksy. They just want that one image on their wall. They don't want any other ones.
Yeah.
They won't collect any others. They might have one Banksy, one Warhol, one Hearst. They've just picked the work that they love, they want on the wall, and more often than not, it's girl with balloon.
It is.
It's just very wall friendly, and wives and girlfriends and children. It's just not offensive. It's very very happy image, should we say.
Yeah, it wouldn't happen with Queen Victoria or something like that.
Yes, there are ones that are more difficult to place. It's interesting because obviously Banksy is often looked at as an artist that produces art for like non-art people. You know, we've talked about that, instant to understand, very easy to incorporate into your home in terms of iconography that like exists and is recognizable. So now let's talk about the ones that are less recognizable, the ones that if you showed them on the street, people might not go, that's a Banksy. Looks more like something that someone's trying to make look like a Banksy. Let's talk about what I'm terming the undervalued works today. Which editions would you say are perhaps the least known but hold great opportunity?
I think there's one that springs to mind, which is a C&D Soldiers, which I think if you ask somebody on the street, I don't think they would necessarily say, yes, that's a Banksy work. What the work depicts is two soldiers that are sort of spraying a peace sign onto the wall, which has huge resonance in this day and age with everything that's going on. And I think that might be an image that if I came into the market completely with a fresh mind, not having sort of spent years working in the Banksy market, I would probably say that that's the most Banksy-esque picture there is. And it doesn't seem to be, the market doesn't see it like that. It's not the most asked about picture. It's not the most sort of traded piece as well.
No, it's definitely gone under the radar. I mean, it holds a huge significance for us as a business. We were fortunate enough to be asked to, or a client of ours donated one that we auctioned a few years ago for a hospital in Ukraine. So yeah, and that's definitely one that definitely resonates, I think, with everyone here at My Art Broker. For me personally, I think Jack and Jill, Police Kids, that's gone under the radar quite a bit as well. Yeah, it's a very, very wall-friendly image. I've got clients that actually hung these in their children's bedrooms because, obviously it depicts two children. So that's one I think that there's certainly value in that work.
Sure. And these, both those works, C&D Soldiers and Jack and Jill, are trading below £30,000, which it does seem to be a nice sweet spot at the moment for for certain good Banksy, well-priced signed Banksy works.
That's a buyer's dream. And if you would have said this to clients 3 or 4 years ago, they would have ripped both your hands off and your arms. So I think the opportunities out there are fantastic for anyone that collects Banksy.
Definitely.
You've both talked about two works that very much focus on sort of authoritarian narratives. Is that, whilst we're talking about the undervalued sort of behind the scenes works, you're still actually talking about what Banksy's most known for, which is that narrative?
Absolutely. I think it's there's definitely like I say, value there, whether people know the images or know the market or not. I think that over time we will definitely see works like C&D and Jack and Jill really come back into the forefront. And really get some of the love they deserve.
I think so. Yeah, they'll be written in the history books, I'm sure.
And what about those works that perhaps we've talked a lot about wall appeal, which is something you associate with Banksy's works? What about works like Napalm or Toxic Mary? Do they still have a place in the market?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I think with the how to put it nicely, that the on-wall friendly pieces, should we say, they are the classic Banksy works. If you speak to, I wouldn't say fanboys, but clients that have collected Banksy and people that love Banksy for 15, 20 years, they're still the ones that really resonate most with them. The Queen Vics, the Toxic Marys, the Napalms, Chrysler shopping bags. And again, we are starting to see some, demand back in for some of these works, not all of them. Chrysler shopping bags is one that it's such a small edition. There's only 82 of them. There are no unsigned. It was hugely in demand pre-2020, 2019. And then during the pandemic and the crazy times, it rose with the rest of the market. But what we started to see post-pandemic is, that there is starting to be, we're starting to see a lot more inquiries about it, and people really want. I think some of the clients that might have missed out during the pandemic, when prices went silly, they're now taking positions where it's like, wow, I can buy a crisis shopping bags for 50,000.
I think it's that, because it's a lot of the prime best Banksy work for, like you say, absolute diehard Banksy fans, because it's designed to like hit hard and have that immediate impact, as opposed to, let's say, the more like wall friendly pieces like Go with Bloom, which have become really commercialized. And I think there's a huge benefit to collectors now that if you wanted to buy an unsigned napalm or, you know, Chrysler shopping bags, they're really affordable at the moment, and really, you know, that is a serious opportunity to pick up pieces, because the market doesn't see them as, you know, trading as highly as, say, Go with Balloon or Lovers in the Air, more popular images. It's a great way when that does change, and if that does happen, it's a great way to be, you know, picking up pieces when you can that are really affordable.
I love this sense of sort of collector loyalty. Those that have been around for longer still appreciate those works, and the market hasn't overlooked them. They're quieter, aren't they? They move around much more quietly, because those collectors tend to do more private sales than throw things into auction, you could argue.
Buyers or the vendors?
I think both.
Both, yeah. I think what we started to see, especially over the last, just say 2 years, is that, you know, the collectors from 2010 to 2015, they're now back in the market. You know, they're now able to purchase works. They might have missed, you know, fill the gaps in their collection. We've got, you know, some clients
had that a lot recently.
Yeah, we've got, you know, a couple of clients that are trying to purchase every single Banksy print. They couldn't have done that 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But now they're seeing value and opportunity. And yeah, it's a good time to be involved in the market, I think.
Yeah, it's dollar cost averaging. That was one client earlier this week said that to me. You know, they paid slightly above the odds for something when the market was much stronger and no one saw that sort of correction happening. But now they just literally said to me, they were like, well, you know, this is a great time to buy some more because it's bringing my average cost down, which I thought was quite an interesting take. And to add to your point, I'm getting a lot of older clients getting back in touch and saying, I did want this picture. I wasn't able to buy it then, but, you know, now's a much better time because things are a lot more affordable.
I think what we're also seeing, just to go back to your question, Charlotte, is lots of owners of works that bought, you know, from POW back in the day. I wouldn't say all of them, I don't know the exact figures, but I think the majority of them have now sold the works. So what we're starting to see is not necessarily new client or new vendors, but people that have been purchasing, buying and selling Banksy over the last 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is. They're not the original owners, which you know, goes quite a long way into the fact that a lot of these works are now in long-term collections. They won't be resold. You know, that they will be passed down generationally. You know, some of these larger collections, they're just not coming back onto the market.
I think that's hugely important. And also there's two elements. People are now building positions in the Banksy market 10 to 15 years. You know, we always ask questions. We say, what is your plan with this? And it's, you know, they don't have the flipping mentality, which I think was quite destructive when the market was much stronger. And so with that, the market becomes less liquid in a way. So if somebody comes to you looking for, you know, a Kate Moss in a rare colorway, there's not going to be any one or many on the market at any one time. So if you really wanted that piece, you're going to have to reach out to somebody who doesn't necessarily want to sell it.
Well, exactly. And that's when it becomes a seller's market. You know, what we're seeing in probably the majority of the Banksy market, specifically unsigned, you know, I'd say the entry level unsigned and signed, is it's a buyer's market. You know, there are opportunities out there left, right and centre. When you get into the rarities and the VIP works and the AP works that just are not available, you know, you're going to have to put quite a big offer to tempt someone into selling. Things like Girl with Balloon, you know, artist proofs, the different colorways, they're just not available on the market. You know, people that collect these are long-term collectors, institutions. You know, you've got clients that collect multiples of these as well. You've got to remember that. You know, people have got 2 or 3 of these works. They're not selling at today's prices. They don't need to. They're going to hold on for 5, 10, 15 years. Or like I say, you know, the works in the collection will be passed down to the next generation. So that will affect supply. It has been, you know, what we've seen certainly this year. If you look at the originals market, there's been only a handful that have come up to public sale. People just are not selling. And, you know, basic economics, supply and demand, you know, when there's no supply and the demand's still increasing, the price will increase as well. So
it's interesting because there's so much texture in this market, but actually it's such a young market. it's like a madly young market, and everything is relative to what happened during the pandemic and then the correction afterwards. But actually, you know, when we compare it to other markets and in our very nature, because we sell so much across American pop and modern British, these are much older markets. And you can't really compare it because you have this inflection point in the center of such a young market. It's really difficult to sort of theorize about, isn't it?
It is. I mean, you mentioned Warhol there. You look back at the 90s, you couldn't give Warhol away. People just weren't buying them. You know, that market, so say for a Marilyn that was released in the 60s, that Marilyn would then have been maybe 30, 35 years old, and they were trading for 10 grand, say.
That's mad, isn't it?
Banksy market's not even that old.
No.
These are still trading for 150, 200,000. Like,
Yeah.
if you take out that COVID bubble, and again, that's not just Banksy, you look at any, you know, alternative investments, Bitcoin, everything saw a huge spike and it's come down, there's been a correction.
Yeah.
But you just take out those 3 years and, you know, the graph is still on an upward trajectory.
Yeah.
And it's still a seriously, you know, young, maturing market, which, you know, will only go from strength to strength, I think.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's important to sort of take a step back because a lot has happened in the Banksy market with various events. And because Banksy gets so much coverage in the media, it almost feels like it's been, you know, Banksy's been around for much longer than he has. But it is important to step back and go, well, actually, look what the Warhol market's done over the last 5 years and compare that to, you know, what's happened over the last 5 years in Banksy. It's a very... I'd probably say it's still somewhat a volatile market in a way, you know, but I think at the moment we're probably consolidating to a stage where
I think, but I think you've almost proved to me through this conversation that it's much less volatile than perhaps you think.
Yes.
You know, it occurs to me that your comparison with the Warhol market and those Marilyns selling, you know, 35 years ago at £10,000, and then, you know, I can't help but think of Hockney's iPad drawings, which were selling at £10,000. Recently, the Sotheby's sale was seeing extraordinary heights. You know, everything is speculation at this point. But with a young market, you have to. And Banksy's just not going to go away, is he, as an artist?
No, I think just elaborating on what Jasper mentioned. You know, obviously Hockney to a certain extent, but you know, Banksy's had social media. He's probably one of the most influential artists on Instagram and other social medias. So that's why it probably seems like he's been around and the market's a lot older than it actually is because things have, you know, extrapolated over the last 10 years. But yeah, I think definitely going back to Charlotte's point, yeah, we're gonna the market has definitely stabilized. You know, it's not volatile. You know, we were saying earlier about the average sales prices at auction. I mean, what they've gone up for?
Yeah, they've increased by a few £1,000s from 2024.
So what, 10%?
Yeah, about 10%. Yeah,
and I think that's what you want. You know, as a collector, what you really want from a market is steady growth.
Yeah,
you don't want to see spikes of 50, 100% increase because it's going to come back down.
Yeah,
you just want a very steady growth, which will show you long-term, you know, return on investment, basically. So I think looking at the figures like we did earlier, and you know, is it volatile? I don't think it is.
No,
genuinely.
There's a perception, but actually now we've had such a period of consolidation that's it's looking like a really stable, strong market. Yeah, which and again, you know, the pandemic, I don't think that's going to come around again. That was a really exceptional circumstance, and it'll be better for the market if that doesn't happen again. And but it's also shown a lot of resilience, that there's still demand, that people are still buying, and yeah, the forecast looks really positive for the next few years.
Yeah, you hear people say, "Oh, the market's crashed." It hasn't crashed.
No.
If it had crashed, things would be trading at 10p, and people would be filling their boots.
Yeah, and no one would want them as well.
Exactly. You know, there is still huge demand out there, and there's limited supply. You know, it's perversely, you know, we're in a very good position here to see, like I say, some long-term growth.
Exactly.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because as much as there's a hype when things go up, there's just as much hype when things go down. It's quite short-sighted to look at it as volatile when actually there's just drama on both sides, isn't there? And if you remove that little blip, which in 35 years will massively look a lot flatter, Really interesting. I mean, we've talked already quite a lot about, this narrative that the Banksy market has cooled. And I think, you've certainly discussed a lot that shows us how it's more of a compression and that longevity of time. However, there has been, perhaps if you split the signed market and the unsigned market into two lines, there's a lot less, inverted commas, volatility in the signed market than the unsigned market. Why?
Do you want to answer this?
Yeah, I'd probably say, I mean, just to get to the basics of the answer would be there's just a lot less signed works, particularly when the market's been soft, and and to add to Joe's point, the sellers just aren't really interested in selling at the moment. So there's been a lot less works to the markets publicly, and also we've seen that privately as well. So I think that's probably one of the key parts to answers that question.
Yeah, I think also now that prices have corrected and they are say affordable, then there's still quite a big chunk of change. Now that clients have got a bit more purchasing power, should we say?
Yeah,
they're going to always go after assigned.
Yeah,
if the budget allows it, you're always going to go after that. That little squiggle is worth its weight in gold, and
yeah,
we've seen that from different markets. Warhol, some of his unnumbered and unsigned prints, they just don't trade anywhere near the signed ones do.
Yeah.
So I think that's not just it's not just something in the Banksy market. That just happens in every art market, basically. Collectors want, not all of them, some clients are happy with unsigned, which is fair enough. They still love the image. As long as it's got the correct provenance and it's numbered, that's fine by them. But I'd say there's more collectors than not that given the chance to purchase a signed or an unsigned,
yes,
you're going to go after the signed.
Yeah. And it's sound advice as well. If you can afford a signed, to push to afford a signed. If you do decide to go unsigned, you're going to have a lot more option of works. But it's a signature, and also the mystique behind Banksy. It's quite nice having something like that, that you can actually own, that's physically done, by the artist's hand. And I think exit down the line is going to be more popular just because people want signed Banksy works more so than unsigned.
How scarce, people kind of misunderstand scarcity in the Banksy market, because there's a lot of education needed in terms of print runs at different levels and what unsigned really means. How difficult is it for you two, who probably trade the most Banksy prints in the market, to find a buyer something quite unusual? If you find me a special colorway of Girl with Balloon, how difficult is it to actually A, find it, and 2, consign a work like that for a collector?
It's very difficult. Especially the rarities, the one of ones, the uniques, inevitably more often than not will be in long-term collections that have no need or want to sell. On the very rare occasion that we do manage to find someone that wants to sell one, they're very difficult sometimes to actually come up with fair market value. If there are no comparables. It comes down to the old adage of it's only really worth what someone's willing to pay for it, in which case you need to have a buyer that's willing to make an offer. I'd say it's a hell of a lot easier to sell than it is to source. Do
the hard part first, sourcing it, and then
and how would you argue with me then? We talk as a business quite a lot about how prints work better in the private market and private sale, because we understand what fair market value is, and putting something up for public auction where everyone, with as much information everyone's armed with these days, kind of understands where they should bid to. How would you argue with me that the right place for a unique Banksy colorway is my art broker in a private sale?
I'd argue quite strongly with you, Charlotte, to be honest with you, not just about this, but about most things. I think the main issue with something like this is control. If you were to take a unique one of one to auction, inevitably auction's going to put a low estimate on it to increase people bidding, to increase interest, and set a low reserve. Now, if for whatever reason on the day only one person's bidding, you can't. You've got no control over that sale.
Yeah.
You know, what we can do and what we do very well here is provide, you know, vendors with discrete control, which are two very, very you know, important factors when you're looking to some artwork. You know, you don't want any artwork burnt.
Yeah.
And if it didn't sell at auction, got no bids, then, you know,
and everyone's seen the edition number and uniqueness.
well, it's one of one.
Yeah, well,
Edition number, isn't it?
everyone's seen it. Then makes it even worse.
But yeah, I think control and discretion are the two absolute key factors in what we do as a business, regardless of whether it's a 1 of 1 or 1 of 150.
And you're sort of damned if you do and you're damned if you don't with a reserve, aren't you? Because you need a reserve to bring in those bids. But if your reserve's too high, then you've got your work in the public forum that hasn't sold.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then nobody wants to touch it for whatever reason. They think maybe something's wrong with it. And then it can actually become a real burden to sell. Whereas, you know, if you sell through somebody like ourselves, we've got that specialist market knowledge where we can speak to collectors that would be seriously interested in works like that. Because it's quite a small group of collectors that would look at hand finish, 1 of 1s. And so you can get that sort of data and information.
It is. Some clients also just don't like buying at auction because there is then a footprint of the sale online for years to come.
Yeah.
You know, we've got a number of clients that we deal with who are very private individuals by nature.
Yeah.
And, you know, they come to us for privacy, for discreetness, and ultimately we can provide them with the service that auction can't.
Yeah. And they charge you for everything at auction.
That's why,
So you pay, you spend more than you want.
I just want to move on to kind of what I call cross-platform visibility. So we've talked a lot about the market. We've talked about a couple of defining moments in the market where Banksy in many ways controls his own market by the activity that he creates. How important in the last 10 years has Banksy, his visibility, his stunts, his control over the market been to what we've seen?
I wouldn't say over the last 10 years, apart from the shredding, I genuinely, I don't think that his stunts necessarily cause the market to increase or decrease as much as, say, 20 years ago or 15 years ago. I think when the market was even younger than it is now, you know, things like Dismaland, Better Out Than In, you know, some of those other stunts that he did, that really saw, you know, an increase in demand, an increase just in sales prices, really. Whereas I think over the last, since probably the shredding, I don't think I think the market's now that big and that many people know about him that I don't think he can control it as much as he could, say, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So are we saying that the shred, so shred was 2018, Lovers in the Bin followed this next year, and then we had pandemic.
So yeah, I mean, you look at the pandemic. I know he did the Rats in the Tube, but the market had already just gone
Kicked off.
Yeah.
So in many ways, actually, we're saying the kickoff was really the shred. The pandemic is a secondary factor.
Yeah, maybe.
And there's not necessarily a link that I can see anyway through sort of Banksy street works being in the media, having a positive impact or even a negative impact on his market. And it's probably just to add to your point that his market's become so well established, so much bigger than perhaps he would ever have imagined, that, you know, it's going to take quite a major event like the shredding of the gold balloon to actually impact it and
well, yeah, I think you can't control the beast now.
Yeah,
it's got that big.
Left the stable.
Yeah, the horse is long bolted.
Yeah.
So are we now in a mature Banksy market?
A maturing. I wouldn't call it mature. I think we're still realistically, you know, I'd say the market when he first started selling works, 2002. So that's 24 years ago. I think it's still in its
What has to happen to turn it into a mature market? Just years?
Time.
Steady?
Time under the belt.
Time. I think, you know, if not that he will ever, well, I doubt he would ever do this, but if he was to take, you know, larger gallery representation, you know, like Gagosian or someone big, I mean, I highly doubt that will ever happen, but, you know, to take him into the next stratosphere, that's
He'll never do that.
He'll never do
that.
Yeah.
But even doing more, not retrospectives, but you look at the Cut It Out show up in Scotland recently.
Yes.
That was an interesting one, wasn't it? Because that was actually something that felt quite commercial for Banksy compared to previous shows. I was surprised. I was surprised.
I mean, for him to give an insight into his stencil making and his bedroom as a teenager, it's it wasn't something you would have expected maybe 10, 15 years ago for Banksy to give an insight into his thinking. But
why do you think he chose to do it then?
I've got no idea. I couldn't tell you what.
It was a funny place as well to have that.
Scotland?
Yeah. Up in Glasgow. I mean,
I think it's not London though, right? Perhaps that was the point.
Maybe it's anti-London sort of stance. Maybe. I mean,
well, Dismaland wasn't. Dismaland was obviously in Weston-super-Mare. I don't think would he be able to do something like that in London. It would probably
be more difficult.
It would be tricky. Yeah. So probably did it because it's a bit obscure, and
people definitely travelled up for it as well.
People did, yeah.
Okay, so finally, guys, if a collector wanted to position themselves intelligently today with 3 to 4 pieces from Banksy's portfolio, how would you structure it?
So Girl with Balloon, Lovers in the Air, Nola, and
Choose Your Weapon.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Good choice.
Come on.
There's no indication of budget here.
No indication of budget.
Yeah.
Would you like a budget?
No, I think it all comes down to the collector. Every collector is different. You can put them in different buckets, but ultimately, you've got one client that wants to hang works on his wall, in which case he's got to love it, his wife's got to love it, his kids have got to love it, mother-in-law's got to love it. And you've got a different kind of collector that's purely looking at investment, in which case, they're going to want works flat packed, stored under the bed or in a bank vault.
How many of those sorts of collectors do we really see these days, though?
Not as many, but we've still got a few. There's still a few out there.
And if I did, Jasper, if I was to give you a £100,000,
I'd leave.
Yeah. See you later.
Yeah.
and £100,000 budget, what would you buy me?
Oh, £100,000. So,
and I'm going to enjoy them hugely.
Right. And hanging.
To look at. I'm going to hang them.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping to pass them on to my children.
Right. So you want sort of legacy pieces, really strong Banksy legacy, good works. You've got to get a Girl with Balloon in there. I think we've discussed it for enough time. And I'd probably go, a Girl with Balloon as the iconic image to have in your collection. It's going to be the strong sort of stable piece. And unsigned, yes. And would be an unsigned Girl with Balloon. And then I think we'd probably start looking at some earlier Banksys. If you were somebody that's very enthusiastic about Banksys, you are. You get some sort of early unsigned Banksy works that are trading less high in the market, and things like Napalm unsigned. I thought the Law unsigned, Weston-super-Mare. Bond Middle England. These are all works that are, you could pick up a few of these and still have some money left over, I think. And space wise it would fill the room very nicely.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, both of you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.